Welcome back to the Coaching Lab podcast. My name is Lee Baker, and I'm your host for today's episode, where we're going to explore the topic that feels most relevant right now, and I know in my own life, mindfulness, and how it can support us in navigating stress, building awareness, and then showing up more fully in our lives and our work, simply being where our feet are. So in a world where we are on the go, mindfulness offers a way to slow down, tune in, and respond with more intention. But what does that look like in practice? And how can it be meaningfully integrated into coaching and everyday life? To help us explore these questions, I'm joined by Serena Jain and a little bit of Brad Cooper. Serena is a national board certified health and wellness coach and a mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher. So in this episode, we're going to break down foundations of mindfulness, explore why it matters, especially when it comes to stress, and talk about how coaches can thoughtfully incorporate mindfulness into their work with clients. And you'll also have the opportunity to experience it for yourself. And we love that you found the podcast and want to take a quick opportunity to let you know about an exciting event we have coming up this fall. So this September, we're hosting the 8th annual coaching retreat and symposium at Estes Park. It is one of my favorite times of the year, and it's a weekend designed specifically for health coaches who want deeper connection, meaningful growth, and a space to focus on their own well-being. So for more information, you can head to our website, Catalyst Coaching Institute. And if you've ever been curious about mindfulness or wondered how it might support your own well-being or your work as a coach, you're in the right place. Serena, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation today. Along with being a national board certified health and wellness coach, mindfulness is such a central part of your work today. Can you share a bit about how you first found mindfulness and what led you to eventually teaching it?
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much, Lee, for having me on this podcast. Super excited to be here. So how did I first get to it? Well, I was raised in a family with quite an affinity to meditation, yoga. My family's from India. And, so I grew up in that kind of background. But I actually got into it when there was a health crisis in my family. And my mom and I decided to go on a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And I was only 22 at the time. So 10 days of silence as a newly graduated, undergrad is, it's a big deal. And it was really amazing. So highly recommend. That's how I got into it.
What would you say you learned from that experience?
Oh my gosh. The power of presence and slowing down and stopping all input and how transformational that can be.
And Serena, flesh that out for us a little bit, because we talk a lot about taking a retreat with no electronics and TV and that kind of stuff for a couple of days to think through your vision and where your life is and where you want to go. 10 days, I've heard that number frequently. Is there a rhythm to these where 10 days is kind of third most popular and 3 days and there's a 24-hour version, or is 10 days kind of the standard or the gold standard for investing your time in taking that step?
That's a great question. Thank you, Brad. I wouldn't say it's the gold standard. I guess I'll be honest with you. I didn't really know too much about what I was getting into at that time with life. And I just kind of decided, you know what, let's do this. It sounds like it could be really helpful. Now, today, in this day and age, there are so many options. Like you can go for 3 days, 2 days, you can do it online at home, you can go anywhere. Literally, there's so many retreat options. But for this 10-day retreat, which is a famous place, it's called Vipassana, and they're centers all over the world. They don't charge. They're free of charge. They're completely donation-based, and there is a cadence. There's a very structured routine to the day, which is basically about 12 hours of meditation per day. Wow. No electronics, no writing, no reading. Light walking is okay. And typically they take place in some natural setting. Wow. So, you're sort of removed.
Spell it for us real quick. So if people are like, oh, I want to search for this, how do you spell Pasna?
Vipassana. It's Vipassana.
Thank you.
I'm pretty sure.
That'll get them in the ballpark.
And then you can do a search like Vipassana 10-day meditation retreat.
Perfect.
So they're all over the world, these centers. But You kind of, I think you start the day at 5 a.m. with your first meditation. There's a bell that rings. You're guided to come in and out of a hall to meditate. Meals are provided, and you only have to meditate. There's nothing else to do. So it's really, really internally focused and no talking.
I'm fine with the no talking, but they don't let you run either.
No running.
Oh, Serena.
No It's interesting the amount of energy that it takes to talk that you don't realize. And so I get what you're saying, because I'm an active, like I have to exercise literally every day. But it was okay at that time. No running, Brad.
I feel like that brings us to our first question around like how we define mindfulness, because I think people consider, different definitions of it. Like they have it, and sometimes in their mind, like it looks like a 10-day retreat, or it looks like an hour of sitting in silence. And that can feel very overwhelming, but I'm curious how you defined mindfulness based on what you've learned.
Absolutely. So I go by the definition that Dr. John Kabat-Zinn gave it back in 1979 when he created the stress reduction clinic at University of Massachusetts Medical School. And he gave it the definition. It's the awareness that arises when we pay attention on purpose in the present moment without judgment. And then I like to add in with kindness and curiosity. So some really important parts of the definition. So key, pay attention on purpose in the present moment, drop the judgment, add in kindness, add in curiosity. The main thing here, I think that we really want to underline and underscore is dropping the judgment. Because as humans, right, we're like, oh, I don't like this coffee. It's too hot. It's too cold. Or, oh, she did this or he did that. Or, everything is judging. We're constantly judging. Sometimes judgment is good. Right? Like we need to judge. Oh, I should probably stop at this light before it turns red. But a lot of times it's not so helpful. So it can take us out of the present moment, and it can, cause us to, do things that we may later regret. So I like to follow up with this definition by also telling you what mindfulness isn't. So mindfulness, the opposite. So the opposite of mindfulness is when we're on autopilot. And we've all been there, right? Like it's that way of being where you're not necessarily self-aware, and you end up being a little bit more reactive because you're not so self-aware. You're not really aware of your internal compass or that voice that's going on in your mind, and you end up doing things. And so I always like to ask my students or a client, have you ever done something that you wished you could take back? That's a way of being on autopilot. Have you ever done something you've later regretted? Have you ever noticed your mind is going and going and going, and you just, keep on ruminating about the same thing over and over? Or falling asleep is difficult because your mind is restless, your body's restless. So lastly, had trouble focusing or spacing out. Those are all typically happening when we're on autopilot because we're not self-aware and we're not being mindful. So I know I've talked a lot, but the key here is mindfulness is not just sitting on a meditation cushion. It's actually a mental training to focus and bring awareness to your present moment as it is, and also build that body awareness, kindness, curiosity, which can be done without just being on a meditation cushion. We'll get into that.
So I'm going to jump in with, I'm sure some of our listeners are thinking, like, I have trouble meditating for 10 minutes without, and she just said to do it for 12 hours. I think I'd be in big trouble. So what's the dip the toe in the water process? So if someone's thinking that would be amazing to go to something like that, but it'd be like going and doing a marathon tomorrow when I never have worn running shoes. So is there a dip the toe in to kind of get that started, and then a 5K version? And can you lead us into that 10 days from nothing?
Sure. Okay, so I just as a little, side note, I went into that 10 days.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
And I was also only like 22 at the time, or 23. So I don't really necessarily think that's a bad thing.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you.
So that's good reflection. Yeah.
If you can have that kind of time and, just like set yourself aside, yes, just do it. Don't overthink. However, I know most people in the world don't. They don't do that. So just like physical training, when you go to the gym, you're not going to walk in and lift 100-pound dumbbells. right? You're going to start with probably 5, maybe 10, work your way up slowly over time. And just like that, it's a mental training. It's the same thing, but it's for your mind. So you start with maybe 5 minutes, build up to 10 minutes, build up to 15. Slowly over time, you're going to train your mind. Yeah. And so if you were to begin and you were interested in a retreat, perhaps you start meditating, just at home, or find a center or a group or whatever.
Work your way up to 12 hours and then you're ready.
You just jump in.
I think it depends on the person, right? Some people lead with curiosity, and, they're like, you know what, I'm just going to do a 10-day retreat. Because it sounds like, Serena, when you talked about your experience, it was at a time in your life where you were looking for something, and you and your mom committed to doing something different and jumped in with it because it was a hard season. And I think other times people think about taking things one step at a time because they're feeling so overwhelmed, like they can't even think about anything else. That can look like jumping in the deep end for a 10-day, or it can look like I'm going to breathe for a minute between my next appointment, or I'm going to go outside for my coffee and look at the trees for a few minutes. Like something that feels like, I think, approachable. I'm curious, with the work you do, you have a lot of understanding around mindfulness and defining it. And I think it can ebb and flow into the health and wellness industry in areas like mindfulness strategies. And then there's mindfulness-based stress reduction. And I think that is on people's top of mind sometimes with MBSR because of the stress piece. So I'm curious how those things are maybe different in how you define them, or what you work on individuals with in terms of mindfulness versus mindfulness-based stress reduction.
Yeah, sure. Great question. Thank you, Lee. So mindfulness-based stress reduction is actually an 8-week evidence-based course. Again, Dr. John Kabat-Zinn began that course in 1979, and he did it. Here's the reason why he did it. So he was a doctor, University of Massachusetts Medical Center, and he told several doctors at the hospital, send over any patients to my stress reduction clinic that you haven't been able to help. Okay. And so what they did was they sent over patients dealing with chronic pain. And he put them through this stress reduction program, which he created, 8 weeks of stress reduction program. And what they found at the end of the program was these patients with chronic pain, while it didn't take it away, the pain wasn't gone. They gained coping skills, which is tremendous
for sure
in itself. Right. So that's what happened. So MBSR is actually an 8-week evidence-based course, which I am trained to teach. And I do that. And MBSR is a CEU that coaches can get credit for. It's a wonderful course if you were to want to apply it in your practice.
Let me just jump in with an ad for Serena. I actually was not aware of the details of what she teaches, but a lot of the discussions we have with coaches at our retreat or in our trainings or offline are, where can I use this? How can I connect this to other passions in my life? And what Serena's describing here, I hope you're all hearing this and thinking, I should back up. I'm a physical therapist. That's my background. So I've been in that world for 20 or so years, and chronic pain is a huge area. So as a coach, if you're listening to this and you are in that place where you're thinking, well, how could I get more clients? How could I build my coaching business, et cetera? That's an option. So connect with Serena, get that training, and then connect with, or maybe in advance, talk to a physician, a physiatrist would be a great route, physical therapist in your area, private practice, and maybe they want to join with you in growing that part of their practice. And now all of a sudden you have a huge, there's such a need there, folks. So anyway, Serena, we didn't talk about doing an ad for you, but there you go, my friend.
Well, I really appreciate that ad. Thank you.
And so it sounds to me like, the mindfulness-based stress reduction utilizes coping skills that allows you to be more mindful. So it's kind of bringing back mindfulness as a tool in someone's toolkit that you can either work alongside clients with or within your own self, right? Is what I'm kind of hearing.
Well,
right. Practical.
Yeah. I mean, mindfulness-based stress reduction, again, it's an 8-week course, again, originally founded for chronic pain, but it can go on to literally it can help with everything. And I don't want to give you some exhaustive list, but basically stress, anxiety, all the way over to emotional resilience and, even helping with lifestyle diseases. And anyway, there's a long list out there. But MBSR is a course we can all take to be able to enhance our lives and also any ailments we may be facing physically and mentally. And so I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought with your question.
That's okay. I think you were getting to another question that was coming to mind of like buy-in for people when it comes to mindfulness. So like this idea of like, we kind of know what mindfulness is and how we could maybe take a program or continuing education to learn more about, okay, the evidence behind it and what's important. But I think when listeners are listening to this, sometimes there's so many things that they could be doing for their health or they could be working on alongside their clients. And they're like, why is mindfulness important compared to exercise, compared to healthy eating? Like, what's this going to do for me or what's this going to do for my clients that could propel me to want to either take a course to help or do something in my own life? Good. So I don't know if that helps shift or frame things. Okay.
Totally. So I would say, well, first of all, as humans, we all are born with a present moment awareness. Okay. So this is something that has no bounds. We all have access to being mindful anytime. It's a matter of tapping into it. And so when we are in the present moment, life tends to be easier, right? There is more capacity for creativity, for stress reduction, for, enhanced performance, sports, or, school, whatever, anything we're doing. When we are present, we are more able to see options and also take that necessary pause. And so mindfulness is something that really is, I believe, first and foremost, the most important thing we could all be doing with our time is to build present moment awareness and cultivate it. And it's already here. We all have it. We've just over the years kind of really gone off into autopilot. And for many of us, pretty permanently, So along with mindfulness, it's this whole idea of not only the mind, it's building body awareness, which is so important because when we're not aware of what our body's telling us, so many things can happen, right? Like your shoulder's hurting. Oh, I'm just going to ignore it for a while. It's trying to give me a signal. And then later, boom, you have like a frozen shoulder or whatever. And that's just one example. I'm sure, Brad, you have quite a bit of understanding with this, but I guess mindfulness feels to me, and without getting too much into like data or research, that it would be the most necessary first step into being able to do what it is that you want to do next. So being present with kindness and curiosity is going to get you where you want to go.
I mean, I'm just picturing a visual of you're at a table and you have all this stuff from your past, all this stuff from your future, and all the things that you want to focus on in the middle. And it's like you clear out 85% of it because of what you described there. I mean, visually that resonates. Of course I can focus better. There's not all this other stuff going on.
Absolutely. It's like taking a wagon to dinner, right? With all the photos from your past, with all the text messages you ever sent, with all the emails, and then also like a calendar of your future and like being able to be expected to be focused at dinner. How are you going to be focused at dinner? So, yeah. I don't know if that's answered your question, but I think it's the most really important.
Yeah, I think it answers this bigger picture idea of, it helps, I would say, enhance all of the other things that we're doing for our health. Like if we are aware of we're more tied to our actions and our present moment when we're aware of like what's going on with our body and our mind, right? So it's like, I think of like eating a meal, for example, at like a lunch break where you can either describe and actually taste your meal versus like afterwards. You might not even remember how anything tasted at all. And like, that's a perfect example of like, where was I for the past 30 minutes of me eating my meal? Or like when you're at a stoplight and like, if you can like think back the past 15 minutes of driving and I can't remember, right? Like anything that you've seen, even though like your eyes are on the road, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it is this like centering yourself into the present moment. And it can be really hard because there's so many things competing for our attention.
Oh my gosh.
And it makes me really want to go into the applicative like things of this, like practical things. So like, okay, when we're on autopilot driving down the road or when we're at lunch, how can we center ourselves back in? So maybe we dive into that and then we could peel back to how that maybe impacts our presence with clients in the coaching space. So what are some maybe practical things people can do to recenter themselves into that present awareness, you would say?
And let me add one layer to that if we can. One, when I realize I'm just not present, and one, when I'm overly anxious, stressed, whatever, about the future or the past. So maybe like two layers of it. One, when I just realized, oh, you know what? I wasn't being present. I'm not stressed. I'm not anxious. I'm not concerned about something coming. I was somewhere else. And the other one, more the, oh my gosh, my red zone is at the top right now. I need a reset. And maybe the strategies are different, or maybe they're the same.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's so important to realize firstly that we have to begin with that first step. So if we want to use this as a resource, for example, we'll need to build it over time. So like I said, when you go to the gym, you don't start with 100 pounds, you start with maybe 5. So let's say you're somewhere else and you really should be present. Maybe it's a really important meeting or whatever it is. You really should be present and you're somewhere else. One way we can reset is just checking in with the body and the breath. Okay. Because the body and the breath are always present. They don't go into the future or the past. And I like to use the breath as you could say it's an anchor, right? Like if you look at a boat out on a lake or something, it's tied down to the pier with an anchor. Yeah, the boat might move from side to side with the wind, like your mind might have thoughts, but eventually that boat is going to stay put because it's got its anchor. Just like you have your breath, it's your anchor. It'll guide you back to that present moment if you can just learn to kind of focus, train on it, and rather than conceptualizing or cognizing about breath, it's important to drop into feeling.
In other words, the 8-4-2 or whatever different models that people talk about, you're saying set those aside for a moment and just tune into the way that you are breathing, the fact that you are breathing, the way your body's responding to that. Is that an accurate reflection?
Absolutely. So breath is voluntary and involuntary. So it's always happening. However, we can come in and we can kind of watch it as an observer and become mindful of it and actually drop from just trying to control it in any way to feeling. So it's a sense of like, okay, put your hand on your stomach and you can feel your stomach expanding and contracting. So you actually have something tangible. It's not so like airy fairy. It's not so ambiguous. It's you could put your hand on your chest. You can actually feel your chest rising and falling. So there's that ability to kind of use your breath as an anchor if you're somewhere else. Or let's say something important is coming up, like a meeting or whatever, and you really want to be focused for it. Perhaps you take 3 deep breaths. Really take 3 long, deep breaths before you enter in. That's a really quick, short way to get kind of in the moment. There's so many short little exercises like that. It doesn't even have to be, a breath awareness, but now if you're super stressed, like super duper stressed and red flags or whatever, I like to sometimes add in that I'll give you an example. So let's say it's our ancestral time and you're out hunting for your next meal and all of a sudden you're being chased, by a saber-toothed tiger. So what would happen back then, right? A person would run. They're feeling high stress. They're having a high spike of cortisol or whatever, fight, flight, freeze. They're probably going to fly, right? Like run back to safety, run. And eventually when they get back to their village, they'll tell everyone about it. They'll come back to safety. That threat will be gone. That stress will be gone for them. But today in our modern life, those are just coming. Like they don't stop, right? We don't necessarily have an ability to run back to our village, tell everyone about what happened, and then it's gone. So today, if you are feeling that high level of stress, let's say there's an attack of like a saber-toothed tiger or not, not for real, but like something really stressful. For me personally, I think movement really helps. Movement, like physical, high impact.
Amen,
exercise.
sister.
Yeah, exactly.
You're preaching to the choir for Brad on.
Right. So if you're, let's say, an experienced practitioner of meditation, maybe you can sit down and you can meditate, maybe that will work. I wouldn't say to someone who is brand new, hey, you should just take 10-minute meditation. If you're like, being attacked by a saber tooth, that probably will be hard for them, in all honesty. Just based
Yeah. So building awareness around the fact that you are breathing and your body and being are in the moment.
Yeah. They're always here.
Right. And where you are kind of in space, I would say, you're here.
Yeah.
Your body's breathing and just centering yourself with that. I'm curious about I think when people start practicing different strategies or coping mechanisms for things or tools for supporting their well-being, they'll have a vision for what success looks like, or a fear around being bad at it, right? And I think we talked a little bit about, take incremental steps, but there is still that hesitation of okay, what if I take this, dip my toe in the water of mindfulness and it doesn't give me what I'm looking for, or it doesn't work out the way that I planned? What would be, you say, your response to that?
Or along with that, are there measurables you encourage people to look at? For example, resting heart rate, morning HRV. Are there other things along those lines that would maybe bubble up that we wouldn't tune into without you saying, you know what? Watch your HRV. I think you'll see something. Watch your sleep pattern. Watch your deep sleep. Watch your resting heart rate. Watch your whatever. So maybe if there's some little clues that people can be looking for.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, it's interesting. With mindfulness, traditionally, we want to try to kind of get out of this idea of practicing with a goal in mind. Okay. We want to try to get out of this idea of striving for something to happen. Because when you're doing that, guess what? You're not in the present moment. You're focused on a goal. So I know that that's counterintuitive to what we're thinking about, and especially in our Western modern day culture, but can we practice without specifically having a goal in mind? I understand a lot of people cannot, and that's okay too. So here's some data for us. I'm not going to actually tell you to go look at your resting heart rate or any of those wearables or anything like that. I would say to you, see for yourself. You are the data. So if you're going to go and do a 10-minute meditation, let's say, how are you feeling before? What did you notice during? How do you feel after? How did this impact your day going after that? You are the data, because I can't practice for Lee. Lee can't practice for me. Yes, there are these measurables. Your heart rate will go down. You will feel a lower sense of anxiety, more calm. There is all that. But ultimately, and over time, as you cultivate and do these practices, you will see results. And you're going to be your own data. So there's a bazillion research studies out there on HRV and this thing and that thing. And I don't want to get too much into that, because I think it's really, really important for us to understand that this is a skill we can all train on. We all have it. It's boundless. We're all born with it. And somewhere along the way, it's been just, covered up by everything. So let's just start to peel back the layers and become more present. And what does that do over time to everything in our life if we are able to become and live and cultivate that type of presence? I don't know if
No, you did. It's a different, I would say it's different than other health behaviors that we consider for our health. There's always kind of this outcome that we're looking for. And I think with coaching, we want people to be process oriented, right? Not outcome driven all the time. You have this vision, yes, but it is cultivating this sense of presence and then next steps. But with mindfulness, you're teetering on that line of being present and then also noticing what the impact is, both before and after. But I think that's different than when we're looking at nutrition, for example, or exercise, right? Because there is a little bit more of that tied outcome that we're looking for. And that's hard to shift our mindset around when we're thinking about mindfulness.
So there's a couple things, and you're absolutely right, Lee. Why should I practice? If I don't have any measurable outcome I can be working towards, why should I be doing this? Well, of course, over time, you will feel a different sense of calmness in your body. You will experience stress reduction. Absolutely. You'll be able to sleep better. Anxiety will lower, all those things. Whatever, if you're dealing with depression, chronic disease, there's so many things, chronic pain. Those things you will gain tremendous coping skills. You will experience lessening of all these kind of symptoms. But it is a little bit different than exercise or nutrition, right? It is different. And there's two things, like you can practice mindfulness just for simple coping, and you can practice mindfulness to change your life. So it depends. Stress reduction is there. Just changing your entire way of being is also there.
Serena, I'm going to throw out 3 different, not times of life, but times of a day. And maybe help me see, is it the same general strategy for each of these? Is it a different approach for these? So one is when you're trying to sleep. It's middle of the night, you woke up, it's 3 a.m, and maybe your brain's not spinning, but you're not stressed about a thing. You're not falling back asleep because your mind is still pondering and thinking about it. So that would be A, when you want to be gone. And then quiet moments might be some time in the morning, or you take a little break at lunch. And so you don't have other things infringing on you, but you're wanting to engage in some additional mindfulness. So that would be level 2. And then level 3 would be when you're in it. So tough meeting, board meeting, an interview, a presentation. I've been actually fiddling with this concept during marathons. So changing the way that I'm approaching my state there. So are there 3 different ways, or do they overlap pretty much the whole time?
It's a really good question. I wouldn't say they're necessarily different or they overlap, but it's more like different strategies for each one.
Perfect.
So let's say you wake up in the middle of the night, you're trying to go back to sleep. You're not necessarily like crazy stressed or,
right,
as you said, but you are noticing some mental distraction. I would say immediately, like something, well, first of all, do not sleep next to your phone.
Of course.
Like that should be in another room, 100%. Not near you. Okay. Yep. All right. Good. I would immediately go into doing a body scan or like a belly breathing meditation where it's very tangible. You drop from cognizing and thinking into your body. Okay. And, some type of deep breathing can help us calm down. If you're woken up and you're trying to go back to sleep, there could be some anxiety present, maybe. So we want to calm ourselves down, and going to the body, starting to notice sensations in your from your feet on all the way up to your head. And we can do a little bit of this a little bit later to experience it.
Yeah.
But something like a body scan or belly breathing meditation or some sort of awareness of breath meditation is good to do immediately if you wake up and you're like, stressed or whatever.
Go.
Yeah. Quiet moments, lunch break or the morning. So I personally wake up, ship my kids off to school, and come straight back to my, my meditation area. I'll do some brief hatha, gentle yoga, bridge pose, some stuff to like really wake up my body.
Sure. And
then I'll go straight to meditation. That's how I start the day, every day. Okay. And then lunch break, a good way to do lunch break, eat a mindful lunch.
And perfect.
So that is something that I teach is mindful eating. It's a whole nother concept.
Sure.
Again, we don't have to just be practicing meditation to be mindful. There's so many ways to do
Great
it.
Reminder.
Mindful eating, mindful walk outside. So no phones in either. Okay. Pay attention to the birds, the sky, the plants, whatever you see around you, your feet in touch with the ground, each footstep and how it feels on the soles of your feet. So getting that sense of presence in the body and also your environment. With eating, same thing. So eating is actually a really wonderful way to practice because you're really wakening up your senses. And most people, we eat on the go. We're eating and working.
Yep.
We're eating and watching, scrolling, whatever. We're not present for eating. And that's a huge, huge opportunity to go on autopilot. So we want to get off it. Pay attention to what the food looks like, smells like, tastes like, feels like. You're crunching, your taste buds, your body, all those things. Again, this is something that can be taught. So I know I'm throwing a lot out at you, but
that's good. It's great reminders.
Yeah. Right. And you'll be surprised at how much less you eat because your body's full way before you
100%.
And how much slower, you can eat and how much more satisfied you can feel with the food. Right. You'll be surprised. Also, mindful eating is really good for anxiety. So when we slow down, in our eating, we can really slow down thoughts and slow down everything. A tough meeting, a board meeting, a marathon. It's so interesting, Brad, that you asked this question, because over time, so I've been practicing for a very long time, I used to get really nervous, like before keynotes or talking in front of a bunch of people, whatever, like large presentations, or something like a marathon. I don't do those, but like some kind of like big deal thing where you're really putting stress on your body or you have to perform. I think over time with this practice, I have become able to cultivate a sense of presence where the nerves are more easily quieted. And so a lot of actors, athletes, actually most professional athletes do practice mindfulness. And actually, that's how I get buy-in from some of the students I teach that are younger. Yeah, I'm like, LeBron practices, so you should be practicing. So, but what can you do? A tough meeting, a board meeting.
And let me clarify that question. So I'm not talking about the anxiety going into it. I'm talking about you're in the midst of it, and how do you stay in the moment when the board meeting, you're trying to convince the CEO of something, the interview, the marathon, your mile 18, you're starting to fall apart. So it's the staying there. It's not the entry point. Does that help? So once you're in, so a lot of these things you're talking about, obvious application to prior to the race, prior to the meeting, prior to the presentation. I'm talking about you're doing a 40-minute keynote and you're 28 minutes in, and you start noticing people looking at their phone. You're in a marathon, you're 18 miles in, and you notice, I'm falling off my pace, and I don't know that I can come back from this. So it's what to do in the midst of it versus coming into it. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, totally. Absolutely. I'm thinking actually about skiing.
Okay.
Bringing it up. So I'll give you my personal experience with this. I learned to ski when my older son was 4. He's 15 now. So, and I'm not an athlete. So
you are now.
I have worked my way up to blacks. Okay. It's shocking to me and everyone else that I can do this. So I practice mindful skiing. What does this mean? When I get up there, and I'm normally like hijacked by real fear of like, holy,
right.
Without saying a bad word, holy hell. It's like, oh my God, what am I? But I literally will just focus on the skis, the feeling in my body, and just look down and say, no, actually not look down, just this next turn. I'm just going to look at this next turn. And then when I make that turn, it's just this next turn. So I do not look down that mountain, but that getting like hijacked into that cortisol of fight, flight, freeze is how you freeze up in skiing, or probably anything, right? When you're really stressed and you just kind of like lose control. And that's when you're in your head and you're not in your body. Now, this is, if you're in a keynote and all of a sudden people are looking at their phones and you're like, uh-oh, what did I do? I mean, of course, the preparation and who the audience is important. And how can you get them back into whatever the topic is? With presence of mind, perhaps you have more agency and more control over what you can do to gain their attention. If you're like all of a sudden in your head and you're like, oh no, this is the worst keynote ever. Nobody likes this. Nobody's paying attention. Well, yeah, you're going to go into that direction. You're not going to like have presence of mind or agency to say, hey, what's so interesting on your phone? Tell me about it. Or, like try to make a joke out of the whole thing or something, right? Right.
So would you have them pause? Like if you're, let's say Lee's got a big keynote coming up next week and she's noticed this in the past. Would you say, okay, when that happens, just say, okay, there you are. You always come. Now you're there. So let's take a drink of water. Let's take a breath. Like, would it be that kind of strategies where you'd have a specific, okay, this happens frequently. It's okay. You're not alone. Happens to everyone. So when it happens, not if it happens, here's what we're going to do that will bring us back into the present moment. Is it that kind of strategy or?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's that kind of sense of like, yes, this does happen to everyone. It's going to happen. And here's how we're going to prepare for it. And I would say come back into the present moment. However you do, what is your go-to? Like, let's say you're focusing on your breath. I like to focus on the soles of my feet.
Okay.
The soles of your feet are the farthest away from your head, which is where some would say the thinking goes on.
I like that.
Focus on the feeling in the soles of your feet, the sensations in your feet. Drop your presence into the body and just get a sense of maybe you're feeling stressed because all these people are looking at their phones. And then you'll probably gain some sort of agency of okay, I know what I'm doing. I'm here to do a keynote. They hired me for a reason.
Right.
I know how I can gain their attention back in. But if you're busy freaking out that they're all looking at your phones, you're not going to have that agency. So drop your presence into your body, into what you're feeling, into your ability to know that you know what you're doing. Right? You're here for a reason. What can you do next? Yeah.
I like that a lot. Soles of your feet. That's a powerful suggestion.
Soles of your feet, and then maybe even a quick scan from their feet to your shins, to your thighs, to your belly, and on up.
I'm going to shift us over a little bit to the coaching presence piece of this, because I think that this is a good segue into it, where, this idea that sometimes coaches, when they're in it with their client, not before the session, because I think we can talk about breath work and taking a drink of water and a break, but when you're in a session and you start to feel distracted, like when your client is, talking about something, you feel like your mind's going somewhere else. How do you pull yourself back into presence in the moment with your client to cultivate that partnership again? Because I do feel like that happens.
Oh, yeah.
Like the coach is feeling overwhelmed or stressed, or like they've got 10 coaching calls coming up and they're thinking about what's next. And then it feels exponentially harder to do what we do when we're not in it, right? But how do we pull back in? Is it similar to when we're a keynote speaker? Is it different? What would your suggestion be?
It's like that black diamond. You don't want to look down the mountain at those next 10 coaching calls, because of course that's going to take you out of that immediate coaching call. But with coaching, so really, really important to cultivate in the beginning before you start that coaching call, some sort of sense of presence, however you want to do it. Okay. And then when you're in that with some breath meditation or whatever, I like to actually guide the clients in a mindfulness practice at the onset, so that both of us are feeling that sense of presence as we come in together. That's what I do in each coaching session. So then let's say I have done that and we get off into a topic, whatever, and I find myself getting distracted. I definitely would, again, come to my breath, come to my body. And also really useful is to do some active listening. Mindful listening, you could call it active listening, whatever. And so active listening, really being aware of what they're saying rather than planning what I'm going to say, which we all know that's a coaching skill. We have all learned it, or we're learning it now. And when we drop into the body and practice active listening, that'll bring us back into presence. Right?
Yeah. I think that's a good cue, because I think for coaches, we go into practical strategies, right? It's like, okay, what can we do? And I do think that remembering active listening can be a skill that helps us be more present and mindful in the moment, and just tapping back into that, and that being a core skill of what we do. Because if we aren't active listening, then we aren't in the present moment, like actively listening to the client. And then we're like, oh gosh. And then our responses or reflections aren't landing as well because we aren't actively listening. And then we start to feel flustered because our client's like, not exactly. Or, the rapport starts to be severed.
Absolutely.
I like the connection to that skill.
Yeah, because when we're actively there, rather than mental planning of their next question or their solution or whatever, they feel more heard and more seen. And then their insights can emerge. And it really, over time, strengthens, I think, their self-awareness. Because we're not jumping in to solve anything or do anything. We're holding the space. We're creating the space. And those pauses are so, so important, as you all know, for them to come to their own insights.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you do breath work with your clients, usually at the beginning of a session, to center yourselves. And I would imagine some coaches are thinking, okay, that sounds like a great idea. Is this within my scope of practice? And I think that sometimes people going through coach training programs too are trying to figure out that line of scope versus experiential, practical things that they can do with a client versus the directing piece, right? And where that line is. So what would you suggest in terms of like things that are within scope of practice, or we talked about continuing education, but yeah, would speak to that maybe a little bit.
So it's a really interesting question. So I'm a trained certified teacher of my own.
Right.
So I feel very comfortable doing whatever practice I decide, right? Let's say there's a coach out there who knows nothing of all this, and they want to be able to do these really, really important presencing kind of exercises with a client at the onset of a session. I would, well, hopefully, and I think the majority of training programs out there have recognized the importance of mindfulness. Like we all, I work at Duke, so we all know, I teach in their coaching program and mindfulness, but we all know the importance of them. And so I've really sort of been championing that. As coaches, you're not a trained teacher. It's like you wouldn't go teach a statistics class, without being trained in teaching statistics. So I wouldn't say you could teach them a practice. A lot of times things can come up. I would say you can maybe learn some really basic, techniques and guide them a little bit, but I wouldn't go into trying to teach and or solve and or fix or say why this, why that intention. I would really just focus on maybe like a very elementary kind of basic practice that you perhaps learned in your training program.
I just love the word presencing. Like when you said that, I'm thinking, Serena, I hope you trademark that, but it's already a word. I've never used that word, but it's great. Like just that word. We're going to do some presencing. Boom. That's awesome.
Right. And you don't have to do breath work or meditation to do presencing.
Right.
You can clap your hands. Like there's so many ways to do it. So there's so many doorways in. So, but again, scope of practice, as coaches, we're not trained as mindfulness, instructors. So, I mean, we might be, like I am, some of us are, but for those who are not, please, I would say find within the training program, what do they suggest? What have you learned? What can you use that you've learned? And take an MBSR program, guys. Like go deeper. It's so useful in the coaching world to help you become a better coach and to really serve your clients.
Serena, what would you think about guiding us through a practice now?
Oh, I love to. I would love to. Can we
yes,
get a time check? Like just confirming we're good on.
You're totally fine.
Okay. All right. Great. Yeah. Anything, what? Let's do something that I may do with within a coaching session, actually.
I think that's perfect. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, and this is for both of you. You could just answer these questions internally. We can process them after. So let's take a moment, Brad and Lee, to just I'll invite you now to close your eyes and or lower your gaze down to the ground. And just take a moment to notice what is real and true for you in this moment. What's on your mind? What's coming up in this day? What happened yesterday? What thoughts? What's happening for you? What's real? What's going on? And maybe there's a sense of stress. Maybe there isn't. Maybe there's something that you need to work on. And you're like, I wish this would hurry up and end so I could get, whatever it is. It's okay. No judgment. Just get a sense. And we're going to drop in to doing a practice now. So get a sense of where you are right now in this moment. And as you arrive here with your eyes closed or slightly down, gazes slightly down to the ground, take a moment to now expand your awareness to notice your whole body seated here in this chair, on a cushion, on the ground, wherever you're seated. So dropping from thinking about the body to feeling your body seated here in this moment. Bring your attention down to the soles of your feet. Just take a moment to notice, what does it feel like to make contact with the ground beneath you in the soles of your feet? And while you're doing that, also notice that feeling of, hey, you're being held up as well. So you're not the only one that's sitting here. You're being held up in this moment. Really get a sense of that feeling of being held. So from the soles of your feet, take some time now to travel up to your ankles and shins. So noticing what's going on in my ankles and my shins. Maybe nothing, maybe there's some sensations, tingling, tightness, numbness, heavy, warm, cold, just noticing, no judgment. From the ankles, the shins, let's come up to the knees and the thigh area. So noticing the backs of the thighs in touch with the chair, the support beneath you. Maybe noticing the tops of the thighs, also the knees, the kneecaps, underneath your knees. And then from here, dropping into noticing the tailbone area, the lower back, lower abdomen. Take a moment here to notice if you can feel any movement in the body as you breathe. So you may notice the belly rising and falling with each breath. Just take a moment to really feel into that and sense into that experience. And then from the belly, lower back, coming up to noticing the full back and the chest area. And in your full back and your chest, you may again notice movement. You may get a sense of that rising and falling of the chest as you breathe in, as you breathe out. Maybe even noticing sensations within the chest and the back. Maybe there's a sense of warmth or temperature or pressure. Just noticing what is here, what sensations are present. And again, that could be just noticing the movement. And then from your chest and back, coming up to the neck, the shoulder area. Noticing the neck, the shoulders, often places where tension can be held. So just noticing what is present right now for you in this moment. And from there, dropping awareness down to the arms and then to the hands. So noticing the hands, maybe they're in your lap or down by your sides. Feeling into, for a moment, your hands, your fingers. Noticing whether the hands have sensations. Perhaps there's a sense of cold or warmth. Maybe some nerves or tingling. Maybe nothing at all. That's okay too. But just noticing, showing up to notice as if there was something to notice. From the hands, let's go all the way back up to the neck and the face. In the face, it's the noticing of the lips, the cheeks, the eyes, the nose, forehead, ears. Take a moment just to notice and feel into all these different parts of the face. Maybe even the tongue and the teeth. And then making your way all the way to the head. So noticing the top of the head, back of the head, sides of the head, the entire head. And now you've traveled from your feet all the way up to your head. And I'll invite you now to just take a moment to notice once again your whole body seated here. And then bringing awareness to the breath. And just getting a sense of where your breath may feel the most inviting to you in this moment. So this could be the breath at your nose, your nostrils. Maybe it's the breath and the feeling of the breath at the chest rising and falling. Or maybe it's the feeling of the breath in the belly, expanding and contracting. And I'll just invite you to find wherever that is that feels most inviting and land your attention there on the breath. And we'll end here with taking a few breaths together there. So just find the breath wherever it feels the most comfortable and inviting. And go ahead and start to notice your body breathing. From the moment the breath enters the body, makes its way through the body, and then it turns around and then cycles back out of the body. So feeling the full experience of the inhale and the exhale. Taking a few intentional, mindful breaths. And just really noticing if your mind wanders, which it will, that's okay. Just coming back to the sense and the feeling of what it feels like to take that breath. So again, not thinking about it, not manipulating it, but just noticing what it feels like. And we'll end here with just taking a moment to expand the awareness out again to include your whole body seated here. And feeling your whole body breathing in and your whole body breathing out. Feeling the nourishment of the in-breath. And then the gentle release and exhale, the out-breath. Let's just take that last couple breaths together here. Again, feeling the whole body breathing in. And the whole body breathing out. Whole body breathing in. Whole body breathing out. And so as we come to the end of this practice, take a moment now before we come back to our session here. Let's just take a moment to notice how you're feeling. Where's your mind? What's happening in the body? Just take a moment to reflect on this experience. And then whenever you're ready, we can just gently flutter the eyelids, maybe wiggle fingers and toes, maybe take a stretch, and come make your way back to the session. So welcome back, guys. Well,
I think we should do this on every podcast.
New tradition.
Yeah, I like it. For sure. So with going back into what we did, let's say you were in a coaching session with a client and you just did that. You started with, hey, how are you feeling? What are you bringing into our session today? What's going on for you? You did this practice. So I'd like to ask you in real time, both of you, what are you noticing now?
Well, certainly more relaxed. I was thinking you're phrasing around visualizing the air, the movement in and out as a full cycle versus two separate things. Serena, that's going to stick. That I was like, oh, I love that.
Great.
I love that. So excellent wording on that one.
Yeah, thank you.
I would say for me, it was, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but it was around, I think, the sensation in your hands and like tingling, numbness, cold, warmth, or you said, or you might feel nothing at all. And it felt like permission to like not search for a feeling of what it's supposed to feel like, but acknowledging and affirming that it's okay however they feel, right? But I liked that that verbiage around that because it gave that permission to be present with where I was feeling and who I am versus like, is it supposed to feel warm? Is it supposed to feel this way? But it was that subtle affirmation, I think, in the practice that I enjoyed.
Absolutely. That's a really interesting noticing because absolutely you have full permission to feel what's really true and real for you. So
that you're probably not noticing otherwise.
No.
Right.
How many of us notice our fingers, ever?
Totally.
But back to so I would like to, let's say you went into this session with a client and you had all this stuff on your mind. They had all this stuff on their mind. It was difficult to become present for the session. If you did something like that, generally it tends to help both the coach and the client. And then you can go into the session and get productive while also being very present because you just cultivated it.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would say the one thing I noticed in the beginning when I first closed my eyes, it felt like my eyelids were fluttering almost. And by the end, they were chilled out and I could feel, I could almost see the light changing in my window, through my eyelids, but it was way more calm. It wasn't like my eyelids were freaking out anymore. So I could feel an actual, I think, relaxation of the body. So I did feel, or I feel like I was more present because then I heard a dog in the background and I noticed it, but I was still in my zone, right? In my moment. So that was a cool thing to let a thought come in and out too, without ruminating on it.
And without going into the story of the thought.
Right. So thank you for guiding us through that.
Thank you for participating.
So we've talked a lot about practical strategies today, practical implications for coaching, different ways to dip our toe in the water or dive into the deep end. What would you say, in final remarks, a few things. What's one misconception about mindfulness that you wish more people understood that we maybe haven't covered today?
Oh, yeah, that's such an important question. Well, the first thing is we can't stop our minds from thinking. Okay, that's not the point of this. Because a lot of people struggle with meditation. They're I just can't get my mind to stop. That's not why. You actually 47% of the time our minds are thinking. So that's just take a moment to chew. 47%. And so they find themselves getting discouraged to practice meditation because I can't get my mind to something. Well, no, you're not supposed to be able to. It actually is really something that happens. So when you notice your mind is thinking, you just gently bring it back to the moment, back to your breath, back to your body, whatever your area of focus is. Again, it doesn't have to be breath and body. So that's the first thing. You can practice mindfulness without necessarily meditation. It doesn't have to be meditation. It's really anything that we're doing in our lives that we are fully present for. So taking it in through your sense doorways. Let's say you're washing the dishes. What am I seeing? What does it feel like in my hands? What is the soap, sudsing up? What can I see? How does my body feel? What am I hearing? What am I smelling? So your sense doorways, right? And usually when we do routine activities like washing the dishes, folding laundry, whatever, we go off into autopilot because we're so used to doing them. It's not like I'm skiing a black diamond. I am literally doing something I do every day. So mindfulness is something you can practice in those informal moments, those routine moments of life. And it's something that you can do formally, let's say with a seated meditation so you're practicing cultivating mindfulness through these different ways. And there's many doorways in. So those are the two things that I think are really important for people to know.
Yeah. Doesn't have to look one way.
Right.
I think that's a good reminder that it can be different and we can cultivate mindfulness in different areas of our life that will enhance how we live and how present we are.
Yes. And one last thing I want to add is that it's a practice, mindfulness practice. It's not mindfulness perfect.
Yes. Right.
Nobody said anything about perfect. So like anything in life, it's a practice.
Thank you so much, Serena, for being on the podcast with us today. I think listeners will get a lot out of it, and I'm already feeling more focused and rejuvenated. So thank you.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Lee. Pleasure to be here.
As we wrap up today's conversation, we hope you're feeling grounded by the mindfulness-based practice and equipped with additional knowledge for how you can implement mindfulness strategies in your own life and alongside your clients. If today's episode sparked questions for you or made you realize it might be time to schedule some rejuvenation, and some opportunity to be more self-aware, we'd love to continue the conversation with you in person. This September 25th through 27th, we're hosting our 8th annual coaching retreat and symposium in Estes Park, Colorado. A weekend designed specifically for health coaches who want that deeper connection, meaningful growth, and a space to focus on their own well-being. And none other like Estes Park to have that opportunity to be out in nature. So thanks for spending time with us today on the Coaching Lab podcast. If this episode was helpful, please share it to someone in your circle, and we'll see you next time.